lots of quotes that are slightly mangled. We are going to be talking about labels. So, what labels do you give yourself? What labels do other people give you? And what do it actually mean by labels?
Oh.
I know one of the labels that you would give yourself is that of author.
Yes.
Happily. And one that you'd be very happy to give.
Yes.
You're a parent. You're
yes.
a wife. You're a daughter. You're a twin.
Yes.
We have so many labels, and a lot of those labels would be very positive and constructive.
Yep, just related to roles.
Yes.
That you play in life.
Or to the attributes that we give ourselves or other people assign to us.
Yes.
That the number of labels that we have, those which are we give ourselves and those which are given by other people, I think can have a real power in terms of helping you feel good about yourself, or owning your own power, or diminishing you, making you feel that you are less.
Yes, because certain labels, certain adjectives that get applied to you in life can, by yourself or by others, can often end up feeling like little prison cells, can't they?
They can indeed.
That because you are labelled as such, you can't sort of step out of those boundaries without there being some kind of consequence, some kind of backlash or whatever. And so you begin to inhabit a very small space that this label allows you to. And I mean, obviously, ultimately, if you really take that logic to its extreme, you're going to, reduce your life to just the limits of what that particular word means to you. So I have lived with a label of duty and responsibility.
Yes. And I think many are dutiful and responsible.
Yes.
In terms of the label. I think it's interesting how often we take on the labels that we're given. And I think I have to say that parents and teachers are particularly, I was going to use the word guilty, but that seems too pejorative, and there's another label for you. But it's done unconsciously. And I think let's start with the labels that we give ourselves first, because I think this as a conversation that's quite far-reaching, and if we structure it to initially think about the labels that we give ourselves. And one of the tests that I use when I'm working with people is I ask them to give me 5 words that would describe who they are, or the attributes that they have. And I would ask them initially to give me 5 positive ones.
Yes.
Now, my experience is that the vast majority of people struggle to find 5 positive ones.
Yes.
But then if I ask them to find 5 negative ones, they say, oh, that's easy, and can give me 10 times that number.
Yes.
So think about yourself. How would you describe you? And think about the roles, how you describe, and those tend to be quite neutral, like wife, mother, husband, boss, worker, team member, and so on. But then think about the attributes that you have, or the capacities that you have, your ability. And then I think things get much more tricky.
Yeah, I think when you start to walk closer to the area of complimenting yourself by giving yourself certain labels, then there is it a society pressure, or I don't know what's inside of us. Maybe it's a gender thing. I don't know if you find that women find this harder than men in your experience.
Well, it's interesting because I think there's a cultural thing. We, particularly in the UK, are brought up to believe that it's boastful, arrogant, to acknowledge your positive things.
Yeah, there are phrases in our culture, aren't there, of getting too big for your boots and getting above yourself, getting above your station in life, and all these sorts of comments.
And I think that comes from a long history of people being very status in terms of where they are in the pecking order. If you go to America, and I'm generalising now, we're talking about vast numbers of millions of people. But it seems much more culturally acceptable for people to be able to own their own abilities. And in many ways to err on the side of, at least publicly, making the most of those. Interestingly, when I've worked with American clients, very often that's a front.
Yes.
And when you start to talk to them, the labels that they give to themselves inside their head
Yes.
are very different.
Yes.
And so that adds to the pressure, although I believe this is a universal pressure, that people believe that they'll be found out for their true situation. And of course, it's never a positive one. You know, people think that, you know, I'm a manager, I'm a leader, but actually if people realise that I'm flying by the seat of my pants, that because it's all an illusion.
Yes.
And it's going to come crashing down like a pack of cards.
Yes, because there is the dark side to the ego, to the id, isn't there?
Yes.
Because when you're inside yourself and you understand how stressful you're actually feeling this, and even though you're putting on a good show on the front, and everybody's looking at your glossy Instagram account and or your TV interviews, and they're thinking, coping really well, but inside you're like, oh my goodness, I'm just holding on, and what's the next question going to be? And I'm going to make a mistake. I'm going to make this look so stupid. And because we have got that internal conversation and that landscape on ourselves, that's why I think it's so much easier for us to go to the negative side and describe all of the stupidity of ourselves.
Well, then you're making sure that expectations of you are not too high, that you are in some way making it more difficult for you to fail more, because in a sense you've already agreed that you failed to some extent.
Yeah.
And in that failure, paradoxically, there is a sense, well, anything I do above this is going to be seen as a success.
Yes.
Now, of course, I believe this is all at an unconscious level.
Yes.
I don't think people, generally speaking, work those things out and do them deliberately, although there may be a few people who do.
No, I mean, I agree with you. I think it is. I think it's like naturally innate, and you have to get to a point. I can remember as a teenager somebody saying to me, "Why would you say that about yourself?
Yeah.
When you wouldn't approach a stranger who you're never going to meet again and be that rude to them. You would be polite and considerate to that person's emotions and feelings, but you're not that polite and considerate to your own emotions and feelings."
We've talked a lot, haven't we, about being your own best friend. And I think if we treated ourselves as we would a valued friend, no better, but no worse, I think everybody would have a much happier, more productive life, because so much less time would be spent on that internal voice beating you up.
Yes.
Now, I think one of the problems is that we see that owning ourselves, our power, as if you can't all be positive, then you're not powerful. But for me, a lot of the power actually exists in accepting that we are flawed, in the sense that we all have areas for development. We all have strengths, and we all have levels that we feel are weaker.
Yes.
And some who feel that that is a weakness.
Yes.
Now, we've talked about Superman before, haven't we?
Yeah.
Now, Superman was a character that was drawn without the problem with kryptonite to start with.
Yeah, he was limitless.
And nobody liked him.
Yeah.
People didn't relate. It's too far distant from the human condition.
Yeah, I mean, what was the point of reading about this character? That no matter what was thrown at him in life, he always managed to find a way to. It was boring.
Yes.
The story was boring. He needed to have tension and limits in order for that to become interesting to the human psyche.
And I think if you put that into the human situation, that tension is where growth happens.
Yes.
That's, if you like, the growth plate on the bone is where the tension is.
Yes.
And, if everything in life was easy and everybody felt that everything was perfect, it's a bit like Stepford Wives. There is no growth. There is no colour to life. It becomes a nothing.
It's the definition of a flat line, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you just don't see that in nature. You do in terms of death and massive transformation. But the sine wave is such
it's dynamic, isn't it? It's actually moving.
Yeah. In order to have the ups, you have to have a return of the low in order to then drive the up. So you have to. This is where yin and yang comes from. This is where the sense of balance, the treading the fine line between, having high emotions, being able to compliment yourself and celebrate all of the positive labels, versus being comfortable and acknowledging the more negative emotions and the more negative labels that you're more likely to apply to yourself.
Because the interesting thing about when you acknowledge those areas of yourself that perhaps you don't like, then what you're doing in that acknowledgement is giving yourself permission to do something about it.
Yes.
Whereas when you deny those things, yes, or you wallow in them, yeah, and feel that you have no power to do anything about it, yeah, you stay stuck. Yeah. And I think it's worth talking about how, for me, there's a huge difference between the label of victim, mm-hmm, and the label of vulnerable.
Yes.
So for me, a victim is where you take no responsibility for what's going on. It's all somebody else's fault.
Yes.
And that there is some positive reinforcement in staying stuck.
Yeah.
That, that there is no real will to actually get out of that stuckness.
Yes.
Whereas when we're vulnerable, for me, being vulnerable is about being authentic and honest, being genuinely who we are. And we've all got vulnerabilities. We have our version of kryptonite. And being able to say to another person that you trust that, I'm not dealing with this very well, or I'm feeling scared or lonely or whatever.
Yeah.
But in a way that doesn't expect the other person to put it right for you, but is just acknowledging that this is something that you're finding difficult.
Yeah, Brené Brown's research on this, she talks about, she starts off with research in shame, doesn't she?
Yes.
And then she moves to vulnerability, and she says that within the cohort of her research, the people who are most comfortable with the concept of being vulnerable,
yes,
in that they acknowledge the positive,
yes,
ups and the negative downs that they experience in life, are referred to as wholehearted.
Yes.
Meaning that their hearts are whole, they sort of emphasise it.
Embrace all of them.
Yeah, and that those who try to deny or turn away or hide from all aspects of their heart could not be described as that, could not be described as having a balance and therefore a greater chance of a happy, contented, peaceful life.
If you're denying part of you, or you're berating part of you, or constantly criticising that part of you, disown or wishing to disown it, you can't be whole.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't lots of things that you can do if there are areas of yourself that you would rather were different.
Yeah.
It just gives you the opportunity, a platform to say, I'm going to do something about it. So far as you can. And if you can't do something, for example, let's use disability. People diss their ability, whether they are able-bodied or not.
Yeah.
But if you are unabled, you can't walk, for example, then maybe, there's no choice in that, but that's a physical reality, then accepting that you can't walk without making yourself as a person feel lesser, I think is important.
Yeah.
But I look at how many people diss their ability. I'm stupid, I'm not worthy, I'm not rich enough, I'm not clever enough, I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm too short, I'm too tall, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not sexy enough.
Yeah.
In that dissing of their ability, they're giving themselves those negative labels, and taking that on as their identity.
Yeah. Now, the people who don't like PC language might stand and criticise and sort of say, well, it is, just whether you use disability or less abled or whatever, it still is the same thing. But it's interesting, isn't it, in the sense of the empowerment that you give to yourself with those labels. Yeah. So a small example of my daughter, she's always had a slightly strange pencil hold.
Yeah.
I tried very hard when she was, first starting school to get her to hold the pencil in a more formal, traditional way.
Yeah.
But she refused, and the teachers at school,
they tried,
but she refused. She's now got to the point where she's really getting into her art, and she's discovering that if she holds the pencil the way she normally holds the pencil, then she's not capable of some of the fine art techniques as easily as others. Now, there was a moment when she was describing this to me, and I felt a great deal of parental guilt rise that I hadn't tried hard enough. I had forced her to hold the pencil, but I know the reality of what I did. And then I thought to myself, hang on a minute. If she is really, really keen on being an artist and achieving these skills, then I only have to go and Google, and there are some brilliant artists out there who do not have hands, who paint with their toes, with their mouths.
Yes.
I wish I could name a few of them, but the names typically have flown out of my head. But if those people can cope with the limitations that their physicality gives them and still produce great art, then I really don't think that my daughter, with a slightly clunky hand holding on the pencil, has actually got that much to worry about. She just needs to get to that point in her head where she says, okay, I've given myself a slightly difficult route to walk down here. I wish I'd taken the other one, but I haven't. I'm here. So what am I going to do about it?
Yes.
And so she can peel off that label of, oh, I've got a terrible, and I can't do art. And she could replace it with another label, couldn't she?
And says, more importantly for me is, instead of being a victim to that circumstance, that she actually takes control of it and accommodates in a way that works for her.
Yeah. Seeks out other people who have perhaps are worse off than her, maybe, or, but seeks out a way. Yes. And it's there. It is there to find. If all you have to do is change that language in your head to say.
But isn't it interesting how often people take on those labels as their identity?
Yes.
And I think that's where it becomes dangerous. If you give yourself a positive identity, fine. But if that label of wonky hand or not great artist actually then means that you think, well, there is nothing I can do about it, I'm stuck with that.
Yes.
And that's how you view yourself, then it becomes a very negative thing.
Yes.
But ultimately, it can also act as the motivation and spur to do something better.
Yes.
But it's what's going on in your head. It's how you view yourself.
Yeah.
And we've talked on a number of occasions, both on the programme and outside the programme, of how often people's language gives them a sense of identity which is negative. So illness is a great example. My depression, my illness, my anxiety, my whatever. And when that becomes so ingrained as the way in which they speak about themselves, they see that as who they are.
Yeah.
And that takes away the capacity to deal with it effectively.
Yeah.
Because there's no separation. You're not your disability, you're not your headache, you're not your depression, you're you, and you are managing a particular condition. And when you have that separation, then you're in a much better place to act, to do something, or to react if you can't change it, to react in a much more constructive and positive way.
Yes.
So let's look at the labels that other people give us. Because we're often within a family, given a label of the clever one, the pretty one, the messy one, the musical one.
Yeah, like actors on a stage performing certain roles and characters.
And so what happens is that young children start to, if they hear it often enough, they start to live up to that label.
Yes.
In the same way that teachers will give children a label of, you're the disruptive one, you're the class clown, you're the SWAT.
Yeah.
And of course, children follow suit.
Yes.
And they've got labels for one another.
Yeah.
And again, the danger is that those become the reality. There's a perception that we see of ourselves, and other people treat us in that particular way, which then feeds that particular habit.
Yes. And again, that there can be some very positive labels.
Oh, yeah.
And you sort of get given them and you think, oh, really, that's me? And then, oh, that's wonderful. And you live up to it and exceed it and whatever.
Absolutely. The expectation becomes your reality, which reinforces the expectation. And so the reality becomes more entrenched.
Yeah.
I mean, there was an experiment done in schools in the 1950s, they'd never get away with it, where they told teachers, they divided the year groups, 3 classes, And so far as they were able to test, they made 3 absolutely even classes in terms of ability.
Yeah.
They told teacher A, you've got the high flyers, push them.
Yes.
They told teacher B, you've got an average sort of class.
Yeah.
And they told teacher C, I'm afraid you've got those who've got special needs, do your best.
Yeah.
At the end of the year, they tested them.
Yeah.
And it was a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
That those that have been in the A class, they'd exceeded norms hugely.
Yeah.
And the C class indeed had fallen behind and they were not doing very well. Now the following year, they brought in new teachers who knew nothing about this experiment.
Yeah.
And they again said to them about the class's ability. Class C became the A became the C, and their control group in the middle were average.
Yes.
Once again, what happened? Self-fulfilling prophecy. Same children, different expectations.
Yeah.
Now, parents will have expectations of their children. Teachers have expectations. Bosses have expectations.
Yeah.
Partners have expectations.
Yeah.
And what will happen is that people will live up to those or down to those expectations if those are constantly put in place.
Yeah, because if you have a thought in your mind, that then and you are willing to accept that thought, then you start to make it happen, don't you? You start to use the language that relates to that thought, and then you start to behave in a certain way, and so suddenly it's not just something that somebody might be thinking. It's actually they're putting in structures that limit.
Absolutely.
So now you've got no choice but to butt up against these things and have a tougher life, or to accept it. And so this is how society is placed control upon us. This is how great wars happen.
Yes.
This is because somebody somewhere has started with a thought.
Yes.
And run with it and made it real.
So look at it in the context of partnerships where one partner doesn't trust the other.
Yeah.
Now, they may have absolute reason not to trust, but often jealousy and lack of trust is not about what's real. It's about the insecurity that one of the partners has. But they then start to operate in a way where they don't trust, where they are constantly checking up.
Yeah.
And, I've worked a lot with couples, and often the couple on the receiving end of that gets to the point, well, I might as well do something.
Yeah, might as well be killed for the sheep as well as the lamb.
And so they are almost driven into this channel, which the other person behaved in a way and said, well, I trust you. Why wouldn't I trust you? And behaved in that way. That other person may very well have lived up to that expectation. Now, if you've got proof that somebody's not trustworthy, that's a very different thing. But I'm talking about the where it's much around a way of not trusting anybody, and ultimately that demonstrates that you don't trust yourself. So, thinking about the labels, and what I would say to those who are on this program today, think about, how do you think about yourself? If I asked you to come up with 5 words to define what you were as a person, 5 positive words, how easy is that for you? And then come up with a list of 5 things that you perhaps don't like so much about yourself. Now, the interesting thing for me is not the 5 words that you come up with in each category, but how easy or difficult you find to do the exercise. Start to think about the people in your life, both in your family and at work. What are the labels that you are giving those people? And how do you then behave? Because your behaviour, your language will back up those labels. Yes. And, we were having a conversation, weren't we, about people who are messy. Yeah. And often, that's the messy child, or that's the messy partner. Yeah. And so we entrench the habit by allowing it to continue, rather than the expectation is, well, it's your own stuff, put it away.
Yeah. So especially in family structures, you start to use phrases like, well, she's always, she's always
what
like
can you
that.
do?
What can you expect?
Yes.
you know, Frida will always behave like that, won't she? Oh, yes, that's right. And so Frida, and I was watching a sitcom where one of the characters is an extremely intelligent daughter. She's,
Yes.
you know, way above her siblings.
Yeah.
And so she has an acerbic wit and a very dry, sarcastic. Yes. And she goes away on a Christmas holiday with them, and the rest of the family are sort of goofing and being slightly idiotic. And she's, of course, very intelligent, can see everything from a, you know, her evaluated position. But she decides that actually that's going to make her very unpopular. She sort of gets a bit of a ghost from Christmas future visit. And so she starts trying to be friendly and positive. So she walks into the kitchen and she says, "Oh my God, something smells really nice," being sincere. But everyone's like, "Oh, stop winding us up, you know, yes, we know you hate Christmas."
Yeah.
And she was totally, even though she was behaving 180 to what she normally did,
nobody
believed her because of the labels that they've got in their heads about her, because of the labels, you know, she'd chosen to exhibit. Yeah.
And I think that's a really good point, because the expectation that people will be as they are means that you are then have a pair of glasses on that will not recognise the changes when they come.
Yeah. Once thoughts turn into words, turn into behaviour, turn into habits.
And that doesn't take long.
No, but once you've got the habits...
95% of what we do is habitual. Yeah. And not only is their behaviour habitual, but your responses are habitual.
Yeah, it can. It's like turning a tanker, isn't it? It can take a long time for behaviour that people expect of you, for them to recognise that you're no longer behaving in that way.
And the interesting thing is that people want instant results. So, I'm behaving differently. Why haven't you noticed?
Yes.
And so what I would say to everybody is recognise your own habits and how easily your habits are triggered by other people behaving habitually and the other way around.
Yes.
Look at the labels. If they are empowering, if they are helpful, keep them. But if they're not, then I think it's important that you challenge those labels, first and foremost in yourself.
Yeah.
You know, the labels that you give yourself often are lifelong, and when you start to examine them, they're a chance remark or a set of remarks made, you know, when you were 5, but now you're 55, and half a century later, you still think of yourself as that 5-year-old.
Yes.
And I think it's important to challenge those.
Yes.
And also challenge the labels that you have about other people. Yeah. And have an expectation that you share with other people. And it may be, let me give you an example, and I'll use a school example. We often used to take children in where in other schools they've been a nuisance, that they've been badly behaved, that they weren't working, and they came with a reputation. Yeah. And one of the things I would say to them is, now is your chance. Yeah. You have a clean slate. We are going to give you the opportunity to do things differently.
Yeah.
These are the boundaries. This is what we expect from you. Yeah. And it's up to you now to match those. And if they didn't, they would get nobbled and they would get told. For me, what was fascinating, 99.9% of the time, those children changed.
Yes.
Their behaviour changed, they knew what was expected of them, and they matched it. And they disappeared in the sense of not being a problem anymore.
Yes.
Now, I think it was a number of things that, one, they had the opportunity to change the label that had been given either by the children and or the teachers.
Yeah.
But ultimately, one of the things that we worked very hard on was getting children to see themselves as being better than that. And so any criticism was, look, I don't like what you're doing, but actually I think you're better than that.
Yes.
And I don't expect that from you because, well, you're not a silly person. You're not this. Yeah. So now change the behaviours to be that better version of you. Yes. And I think, you know, what I'd like to leave people with is we each have the power to do that for ourselves. Yeah. And we each have the gifts that we can give to other people of offering them positive labels in the first instance, but also if there is a label which is being less helpful, that you can offer a person the opportunity to change that label by doing it with them and for them.
Yeah, because we're talking about labels here, we're not talking about tattoos.
No.
There's a definite
That's
choice.
Wonderful, actually, yeah.
Okay? It's not permanent. You can peel a label off and stick another one on.
Absolutely.
Tattoo is something a little bit different.
And even those with a bit of work can be done.
Yeah, they can be eased off.
So that brings us to the end of today. Rachel's book, The Point of Me, which is a great spiritual novel, is available on Amazon and all good bookshops. You can get a free digital download of my latest #1 best-selling book, Thriving Not Surviving, The 5 Secret Pathways to Happiness, Success and Fulfillment. And lots of free resources are available on the website, which is www.genuinely-you.com. That's www.genuinely-you.com. Giving you all our best wishes. Have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Take care now. Bye. This is Gina Gardner from